All right, let's bring on our next guest here who has increasingly looked at the cannabis sector as a potential investment theme here in 2021. Want to bring on Ross Gerber, friend of the show. Gerber Kawasaki CEO joins us now. And Ross, I mean, we spoke with Trulieve CEO Kim Rivers before Congressman Perlmutter a few weeks ago, and she had stressed that she expected the Safe Banking Act to be roped into the next round of stimulus here. You heard the congressman speaking. How big of an impact would that be for the overall sector?
Well, I just want to also clarify what you said. We are heavily invested in cannabis right now. I am all in. I am pounding the table that this is one of the greatest opportunities for investors right now that I have seen in a long time in a non-tech business. So what is about to happen is just huge. It's a momentous moment for people who've been fighting for legalization and social justice on this cause. And what we're seeing is now a sea change move and a huge opportunity for investors.
I'm glad you pound the table on that one, Ross, because, I cover cannabis here.
It's ridiculously good.
Well, talk to me about why you think it's so good, because I know the reform front's there, but I think a lot of people might not realize some of the smaller U.S. operators here, since they're not listed on major exchanges, they may not know, the fundamentals and the economics behind the thesis.
Right. Since we're talking about social justice and social equity, well, it's kind of absurd that Americans can't buy American cannabis companies. It's unbelievable you can't trade these stocks on Robinhood and other platforms. You can on some and not on others, and they all trade in Canada. So here we have one of the most amazing growing industries in America that's all listed in Canada, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Okay, so many investors just can't even participate. Okay, number one. Number two, we have states like New Jersey that legalize cannabis, and they just can't get the laws straight right now. And they've arrested 55 people for cannabis. And I'd love to see the pictures of the people they arrested, because I guarantee you that it is a complete travesty what's happening in New Jersey right now, that they're literally arresting kids for this and ruining their lives. We must expunge people's records. We must make this something that we wrap our arms around and make right, because cannabis laws are Jim Crow laws. They are Jim Crow laws used to oppress people. And I'm tired of it. It's enough is enough. It's legal in most states now. It's a harmless drug that people use to sleep and enjoy themselves. And it's time that we legalize this and give investors an opportunity to participate as well.
Ross, we love to have you on the show because, when you put your money behind something, you are passionate about the investment.
I put a lot of money in this. Yeah.
I wonder if we can go a little macro here, because you heard the conversation last week on what was happening around GameStop, and a number of guests who came out and said, look, this is no different than the speculative behavior we saw around the cannabis space years ago. So walk me through your thesis. Why is this time different if the federal legislation isn't set yet?
Well, this time's different. Yeah, I call it the Tilray on Yom Kippur move. I was in Temple. I was in Temple, and Tilray was going nuts, and I had vowed not to look at the stock market, or God would be unhappy with me. And I didn't, So yeah, we've seen these kind of speculations often. So I don't see the GameStop thing as that unique. But that being said, moving forward, a lot of times when industries start out, they get this big boom, kind of like Bitcoin too, where everybody gets excited about it, but it's not ready for prime time yet. And so cannabis wasn't ready for prime time in the first boom. And now it's shaken out all the weak players, all the corrupt guys, all the poorly run businesses. And what we have left are some incredibly good, well-run businesses. Like you mentioned, Trulieve and Kim, she's just an incredibly good operator. What a great business, Trulieve. And then I'm working with the people at TerraSend and Planet 13, other great operators that I've dealt with personally. I think management's great, and the opportunity is insanely good. So it would be nice if these stocks trade in the U.S. and everybody could participate. And I see that as a social equity issue too, kind of what all the kids are complaining about. Like, here's this great opportunity that kids can totally understand and should be able to invest in, and most of them can't. So we see cannabis this time being different because it's matured and grown into a space kind of like Bitcoin, where now it's really, really ready to move to the next level as a major industry.
Yeah, let me also add this too, because we talk about the profitability here of the U.S. operators versus those in Canada, but also ways to play it. We were showing the MSOS ticker, the ETF there that includes a lot of the multi-state operators. That's one way.
Right.
But when we look at the broader volatility. When we look at the broader volatility, we saw MSOS and some of these other U.S. multi-state operators take a hit because they had run up quite a bit, I guess, to start the year. But what do you make of maybe how these names will trade relative to the broader market if we do hit another air pocket here, or maybe if it just continues today, could just be a one-day salvage, I guess, in the broader market?
No, I mean, I've become a bull again. I think, the Biden future for America is super bullish, and we're making strides against Corona. And I think by the end of the year, we'll have a much better life. And as you move forward, the pent up demand is enormous, and cannabis is a huge winner in the pandemic because many people have been using cannabis to get through the pandemic. And I'm not going to lie, it's been pretty helpful. So, I think what we're seeing is the beginning of a boom for these businesses as they become legitimized through federal legislation, which I see happening in the short term. But I think also these are straightforward businesses too. It's not a complicated thing running a cannabis dispensary, and it's a retail operation. It's great for the economy as well, and job creation on all economic levels. So we just see this as one of the greatest opportunities over the next 5 to 10 years. But the volatility is going to be there.
Ross, we've been focused on the cannabis space, but I know you have a lot to say about what has been playing out with the Reddit trade, the retail investors that are getting into the market. What do you make of the run-up we saw last week and the significant pullback we're seeing today? Is this an unwind, or is this the beginning of more volatility that has been injected because so many retail traders have come into the market?
Well, I think what we saw was mostly a byproduct of a poorly run business called Robinhood, where they've allowed enormous levels of margin and speculation to manipulate markets and create a lot of, I would say, systemic risk in the system, which was then rectified by the clearinghouses, which decided they weren't going to let Robinhood destroy the system through absurd levels of risk, sort of AIG style. So actually what we saw was the market worked very, very well. It determined that Robinhood was a poor actor and then limited its ability to create chaos. And that's why we're seeing the market come back this week, is because the market was very concerned about what the systemic risks of allowing Robinhood nightmare trading to continue unchecked. And so this is a very healthy check. I think it shows that markets work pretty well. And the GameStop trading to me is legit. They caught a bunch of naked short sellers real naked, and they killed them. And the stock will move back to fair value eventually, what all stocks do. So I think I typed it this morning, like earnings is the gravity that brings all stock back, and GameStop has to report earnings, and they're not that good. So, I would avoid GameStop at all costs if I was an investor.
I'm glad you mentioned earnings, because we continue to get the updates there from a lot of companies. We got obviously a few more updates this morning, and generally the theme seems to be right now you're seeing beats, but not necessarily pops that also come off of that, which I guess would maybe signal that right now, don't know if we're trading at fair value. We've been talking a lot about valuation for the broader market, but when you look at maybe some of the catalysts here, I know you say you're a bull, you're a believer in where we go from here, but on the stimulus front, I guess that would be the next catalyst here. So how do you see that shaking out and what it means for what moves we could see?
Yeah, I think you're hitting it on the nose. I think markets had anticipated the results that we're getting, and they're in line with what the market had anticipated, which were very positive by the PE ratio of the market and the growth we've seen in the stock market. So the market's very highly valued right now. So expecting like huge pops, I think, is a little bit unrealistic, because we've already seen the growth, and now we're getting the confirmation from the earnings reports that growth was warranted. So really the market's saying, what's next? Where do we go from here? And stimulus is a big part of it. We've created a country where the government, taxes you and then just gives you free money, and nobody seems to care, and rates are low. So nobody seems to care. So of course, if they have any stimulus at all, I mean, most people in America are actually employed. They're just going to spend that money or invest that money, and it's going to be bullish. But it's bearish long term because we have to pay for it. And as much as everybody is really happy right now, the biggest risk we see is inflation. Inflation is coming back at the end of the year. When this economy opens up, it's going to be a floodgate of spending. I mean, just trying to take a trip to Hawaii is going to cost you a fortune. So I think the boogeyman's going to be higher rates and inflation that we're going to see when we actually do have the economy come back. But right now, I think we're in a sweet spot between, too much growth and too little growth. And there's an opportunity in here for investors that might get more difficult as things get better.